You can't replace part of the brain. Like, you
treat them the same.
A source of truth for the medtech industry.
Coexists with the province.
Robot understands things automatically.
Number one show in the medtech industry.
So Stryker got ahead of that and changed in the 90s, built $1 billion company that held up high, a lot of things.
State of MedTech with your host, Omar and Khateeb. What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the show. It's finally here, my friends. It's finally here. The day has come. Prediction that I made well over 2 years ago has actually come true, which is the new sexy thing. The place that I think a lot of investors should focus on is hardware that uses software to enable clinicians to do things that specialists normally would do. The company that I've always talked about, they've been always on my radar, is DermaSensor. DermaSensor is the future of skin cancer detection because now it is FDA cleared. It's a great technology with a phenomenal board behind them and, of course, great leadership. Today, my guest that joins me is Cody Simmons, who's their CEO. I've known Cody for, I think, well over 5 or 6 years now. I have to take a little bit of credit because I helped Cody find his COO, who's his second in command, partner in crime, which is Ryan Frieden. They're a phenomenal team over there. And so I couldn't be happier for them that they finally got FDA clearance for their device. More importantly, is how many patients are going to get helped, right? The idea here is that if you take the specialized skills of a dermatologist, put it in hardware with software and give that to general practitioners, more skin cancer lesions and lesions that should be monitored and, of course, eventually diagnosed by a dermatologist will be caught earlier and sooner. So it's a great thing. I think over time, millions of lives will be changed and saved because of this. So excited to have Cody on the show. Before we jump to that episode, a couple of quick reminders. Number one, are you a startup company that's trying to raise money? Perhaps you're trying to get commercial adoption going and you're struggling. We all know how difficult that is, especially if you don't have a large sales team on hand to help you with that. Well, here at Khateeb & Co., we do just that. We work with you directly to essentially put in place a commercial plan so that you can raise awareness with investors, drive content using social media, and at scale, find early adopters fast and easy. And of course, we work with a lot of different medtech companies that don't even have a single salesperson. So if you're looking to outsource and elevate your commercial strategy and your fundraising awareness, hit us up. Go to khateebandco.com to learn more. Secondly, if you are an early stage startup, one of the most important things is using data to guide your decisions. Unfortunately, when it comes to databases that have procedures, procedure codes, physicians, those kind of things, they're really expensive, right? And there's a lot of great databases out there for that, but costs a lot of money. One database that I personally use in my organization is Alpha Sophia. Alpha Sophia is specifically designed for early adopters and, more importantly, for startups, because at only $300 a month, anybody can afford it. I've used it to help find early adopters and key clinicians for my podcast. It's also helped me with early adopters profiling with my clients. So if you want to learn more about them, go to alphasophia.com/Omar. That's ALPHASOPHIA.com/Omar. You get 3 free searches, 3 free reports, essentially, of the profiles that you're trying to look for. And lastly, if you're a medical sales rep and you're trying to elevate your game in terms of how do you sell remotely and digitally, I have a program called the Medical Sales Network Effects Program that helps teach you exactly how to do that. How do you use LinkedIn to sell? How do you use email at scale? How do you even persuade somebody through text? We cover that in my program. So check the show notes below or go to digitalmedicalsales.com and use the code President's Club Podcast. You get a discount to join that program, plus our free private group where you can connect and network with CEOs, VPs, and other reps. Now, with that being said, let's get on to our episode with Cody Simmons, CEO of DermaSensor. Enjoy. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. And I got to tell you, this episode has been a long time coming. I'm joined by a good friend, an old friend of mine, Cody Simmons, who's the CEO of DermaSensor. Just to get a little bit of background, I've been a sort of fan of DermaSensor and longtime supporter. I feel like, how long has it been, Cody, now? Like 7 years?
Well, you introduced Ryan and I just over 7 years ago, who's our COO. So yeah, man, you were right there at the beginning. You helped create the beginning.
Well, man, I appreciate you saying that. Ryan is fantastic, and so I'm so happy it worked out. But yeah, you're a technology that I've been following for a while. I've posted about in the past. And, the main reason is that I really believe that the future of medtech is where you take great hardware, couple it with software, and take the skills and knowledge base of specialists, which by the nature of being a specialist, there's not a lot of them, and disperse it across the larger medical community, right? So DermaSensor is essentially, it's a handheld device that focuses on cancer screening, correct? I want to make sure that I have the verbiage correct here. Right?
Yeah, that screening, you can use that term. I think it helps exactly frontline providers or primary care physicians in their assessment of lesions. Technically, we don't use screening because screening suggests like every lesion or every patient. It's lesions that are suggestive of skin cancer to some degree to the physician.
Got it. Yeah. Well, more importantly, what I love about the device is that, again, it helps the general physician, whether it's family practice or internal medicine, in the better position to serve a patient ahead of time. And in theory, when you give them these kind of tools, they can, find and diagnose these things a little bit easier themselves with the help of the technology, and then get a patient to a dermatologist sooner. Right. And so I think that this is a great thing. This is a huge win for patients. A lot of times we forget about it, but like what we do in this industry is really important because it's saving lives. And this kind of thing is it's something that, I can think of multiple people in my life who had a skin lesion go a little bit longer than it should before they went to a dermatologist. And now you're enabling generalists to use this tool to view and help them in their diagnosis. So I love it. So first of all, congratulations. You guys just got FDA approval. Let's talk about the journey, first of all, because that's a long, long time. Why did it take that long, first of all, if you can educate the audience?
Yeah, I mean, as I'm sure most of the audience know, healthcare is hard. And as some of the audience probably knows, hardware is hard, and we've got both. So, yeah, I think, when I joined kind of the large 30-pound microwave size prototype, that Ryan and I were hoping that kind of collaborators and early investors, like, yeah, that should be able to get that down to little handheld light pen in a year or so, right? Ended up being 3.5 years. So that was certainly a kind of painful process up front. Yeah, I mean, a couple years there, and then did, handful, like literally a handful, probably 4 or 5 more clinical studies than we originally planned, which I can't really think of one of them that we could have not done and had the robust, I mean, ultimately the algorithm that we had in place and like the product output, we made an important product output change a while ago. Happy to tell you more about that. But yeah, I mean, the extra time and extra R&D that we did, I think ultimately proved paid dividends. I actually, our lawyer, it's probably a good idea, shouldn't send it to me ahead of time, but after clearance, sent me like a 300-page export from the FDA database. And our division within FDA, there with the last 4 years of data, there was 26 de novos accepted for review, right? So I had all the necessary components. FDA said, okay, we formally accept this submission and we'll review it. In our division, of the 26, 3 were cleared. So 12% clearance rate. And legal said across all of FDA, it's 50%. So this division, which is not great to begin with, but 12%, this division was particularly hard. So yeah, I think attention to detail, following good science, robust R&D. Unfortunately, 6.5 years of it would have been nice to maybe have been able to get by for 2 or 3, but hard to imagine how we would have been able to.
No, but I mean, this is what I love about DermaSensor's story is that you guys followed really good science and you backed it up by pressure testing it with really robust R&D. And so when you start coming to market for physicians, most clinicians are pretty dogmatic about what they adopt for a good reason, but seeing all of the work, hard-earned work that you guys put in, the algorithms that you guys trained, and the database that you have is going to put a lot of physicians at ease and inspire a lot of confidence for them to adopt this, right? Which will lead to helping thousands, if not maybe millions of patients, So I think your team you have a lot to be proud of.
Thank you. Yeah, no, well said. Yeah, we're at 13 completed studies. We've had, I think, 3 or 4 of those are independent, like investigator-initiated studies. Basically, we shipped a device and said, go do whatever study you want. And those results have really reconciled well with ours. So, we haven't kept kind of a tight clamp on kind of controlling study data and publications. About half those are published. Some of them weren't published because they were early algorithm development studies, so weren't really designed to be meaningful validation studies. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think the guiding light for us as a company was this is just a major, long-standing unmet need. There's only about 11,000 dermatologists in the U.S. Only 8% of Americans at risk for skin cancer have received a full body skin exam in the last year. 8%. But as many listeners I'm sure know, there's a major dermatology access issue. So just from a population health standpoint, there's no way that already with long wait times that the current dermatologist could actually provide care to the other 90% of Americans that are at risk for skin cancer that don't see them. So, the only way, and over 99% of skin cancer is curable if detected early, right? So to your earlier point, Omar, like how do you, the tens of thousands of deaths from skin cancer every year are almost all of them are preventable if skin cancer were detected promptly. How do you do that? You can't quadruple the number of dermatologists overnight, but you can upskill and improve the ability of the 300,000 primary care physicians, right? And this has been something the dermatology community has been wanting from the primary care community for decades. They've been trying to get them to use what's called a dermatoscope. It's literally just a polarized magnifying glass, but kind of helps. Yeah, it's almost like learning. Yeah, like learning ultrasound, or it's a significant clinical endeavor. Tens of hours to really be good, and then you have to maintain it. And a lot of PCPs don't do biopsies, so there's no feedback loop. So, about around 10% of the 300,000 PCPs use it. Which, when you think about it, that's a pretty big number. I mean, that 30,000 doctors have adopted, which shows the importance of this problem, and that they're willing to put in a lot of time to address it, and buy a $2,000 dermatoscope, which isn't reimbursed. So the fact that now you have a device FDA cleared that can achieve basically the same utility of improving lesion assessment across all 3 skin cancer types, but takes 15 minutes to train on because it provides an automated objective risk result, not tens of hours. That's where all the excitement, and we got great coverage. Was quite an honor a week ago after announcing clearance. Yeah,
That's fantastic. And if you don't mind, Cody, so we kind of got to the sort of happy end of the story, and I kind of want to go back to the origins of it. 7 years ago, which is first, what were you doing before this company, and how did you how did you get involved with it? Because you have some really impressive, sort of iconic med tech names as investors in this company, which we'll get to in a little bit. But yeah, how did you come across this company, and how did that what's the origin story?
Yeah, sure. It's a bit. I'll start with myself maybe for the first minute, and then kind of tie in the company part of it. So, my background's in bioengineering and business. I was at Brown University up in Rhode Island undergrad, and then doing my master's research in a bioengineering lab at Stanford, and kind of knew I wanted to do the startup route. I'd done some stuff in undergrad, and worked at a VC fund part-time for a year. Launched a nonprofit kind of web-based startup senior year, and while I was at Stanford, worked with 2 PhDs to spin out technology out of their lab. We went through the StartX accelerator, raised some angel money, did a licensing deal with the university. Kind of a good, at the time, felt very serious. And so kind of had a taste of it, but okay, I kind of need to get a foundation in somewhere. I didn't want to take the MS through to PhD, didn't want to do the MD route. So I went to Genentech for a few years, did a leadership development program there, mainly commercial strategy and business development roles, and then was in the U.S. commercial strategy group, pricing group specifically for oncology. So was one of a few people in charge of pricing and contracting for the world's largest oncology drug company and portfolio. Very analytical, high profile within the company, high profile in the media, cancer drug prices. But in terms, I don't think really meet the entrepreneurial or engineer kind of creation aspect of things, right? Wanting to kind of develop and create new value, not slightly change numbers on existing products. So had been on the lookout for kind of a startup opportunity and joined a company, Digicite Technologies, as the 6th employee as head of business development, which was very similar. So it was kind of mobile medical devices to help frontline providers and also patients kind of capture data to better triage disease detection. So it's a mobile visual acuity test for patients at home to track retina disease stability and decline, and also a clip-on ophthalmic camera for fundus images and interior eye images. So yeah, was there for a year. We had some challenges, lost a couple big deals. We were hoping with pharma companies and health systems, and reimbursement and a couple other things were significant issues. So it's like, okay, are we gonna pivot, or are doors gonna close? So it ended up, Doug Foster took the company through, and they did a great job pivoting, basically following Flatiron Health for ophthalmology kind of approach, rebranded to Verana Health, and been doing well since then, but shelved the 2 medical devices. And so kind of leading up to that was introduced to Dr. Maurice Frey. And I'm from Florida. I grew up in North Florida. My parents grew up in Miami. And so Maurice, very, very impressive serial medical device entrepreneur and executive. So orthopedic surgeon by training, and then started a company that sold to GE. Then while he was at GE, actually came across this technology at Boston University, where he went to medical school. This spectroscopy technology, and also a company called ZCat Robotics, which was a little more progressed. And so ZCat had a surgical system. We're trying to figure out what application in surgical robotics, which was, my understanding, very early at the time. Really, the only product that had been developed was the Da Vinci robot at the time. And there's a lot of skepticism that surgical robots for orthopedic applications didn't really make sense. But he kind of persevered and
boy, did he prove that wrong.
Yeah, he proved that wrong. So Maurice and Chris Dewey started, kind of sort of bought the technology and spun out ZCat into Mako Surgical, which, went public, I think 8 years later, and then sold to Stryker for $1.6 billion. And Dr. Fred Moll, who's one of our investors, and him and Maurice and Chris kind of are often on each other's boards. And Fred also started Aura Surgical. So yeah, we've got a lot of great, very seasoned medical device entrepreneurs. And to quote Maurice, so I was introduced to Maurice in January 2016, so exactly 8 years ago. And he said, we have an interesting research project, and we're looking for someone to turn into a company. So during the Mako journey, him and Fred and Chris and this group of guys started a handful of companies together, either like formally created an entity and formed, or were key early investors and became major shareholders. And so they started DermaSensor, OrthoSensor, even named them the same thing, a handful of others. And so that's kind of, I think of it almost as like a privately funded NIH or SBIR grant. You can almost think of it. The company had spent about $1.5 million to date. So when I joined, I think there was $800,000 in the account. It just had 2 of these large 30-pound prototypes with a pretty small amount of data collected, and no issued IP, 1 filed patent, and that was pretty much it. I mean, no medical advisors, no real idea on how to miniaturize it, and so hence the research project description.
I want to go back to the introduction. Who introduced you to them?
So I'm glad you brought that up. A good friend of mine, actually from undergrad, Christian Seal, had started Boot Camp Miami. It's a South Florida digital health accelerator. So he started that guess 8 or 9 years ago, and Maurice was one of the LPs in the fund. And so I forget exactly what the conversation with Christian was, but it's basically like, hey, there's this new skin cancer thing. And I know, he knew my mom had melanoma. Fortunately, it was early stage, wasn't a big deal. I had my first biopsy when I was 15. So skin cancer is always something I was aware of. And obviously at Genentech, oncology was the main focus. And they actually have a skin cancer drug called Araveg, which I wasn't on part of launching or part of the commercial team for that. But so there's always something to kind of, aware of on my radar. And he obviously knows from Florida. So when he'd heard about this project that Maurice was working on, he connected us. And it was funny how he described it. I literally was like, yeah, I'm not really interested. Because he's like, yeah, something like some smartphone attachment or something for like cancer. I was like, aren't companies doing that? He's like, well, you want to talk to this guy. Like, this is a guy we're speaking with. And when I got on the phone, yeah, it was not that at all. It's like, okay, like serious technology, nothing to do with taking photos from a phone. And yeah, that was the initial connection. So that was in January 2016. And I was living in a temporary condo in May 2016. So yeah, it was 27, ripe old age of 35 now. I got less hair and more gray hair, but
Yeah. It sounds like what happens in a startup, man. I remember my first gray hair in my beard not too long ago. So when you first looked at the technology and everything, what was it that made? Because it's a big commitment. I mean, especially if you haven't worked in the industry, you kind of have you don't know how hard it is, right? But you had already worked in the industry, so you know how hard this is. Like it's hard, right? I don't know. I had a chance to leave the industry, but I came back. I love what we do, but also I don't know. Maybe I love the pain of how difficult it is. What was it in that conversation that made you like see the potential in the company? And what like was it the fact that Maurice was behind it, the tech? Like what was that moment that you're like, yeah, you know what, I'm ready to like go all in on this?
Yeah, I mean, it was a couple main things I would say. Especially moving, I got a lot of flack at the time. Friends were like, "So wait, you're moving from Silicon Valley to Miami for a tech
That was
startup? Like, what?
yeah.
You're
I was
going
gonna say
from like the mecca of tech startups to, especially at the time. Now, we're in
I was gonna say now, yeah, but back then, like
yeah, 8
Miami
years.
was
People were like, "Why the hell? Like, what are you doing?"
yeah.
So yeah, I certainly coming to Florida specifically was in large part based on the group of guys, group of people involved, right? Because it's outside of without the kind of involvement and support of some successful entrepreneurs and folks like that, very hard to, especially kind of joining solo, hard to make that happen in a place like South Florida 7-8 years ago, right? So certainly that, but yeah, I think the credibility of if the technology and vision, which both make sense to me, yet not that I had time for deep diligence, but like, okay, dozens of publications and clinical studies from the spectroscopy technology. Obviously, it's a novel modality. Imaging doesn't seem to work very well in this field because a product called Melifine had barely gotten FDA approval a few years prior, and the performance wasn't very good. And that was a $50,000 hyperspectral camera system. So like, okay, it seems like this whole applying AI to photos of lesions, like, because the first publication on that was in the 80s. And I was like, if the best thing that's come through for that was a really complex, sophisticated camera system and didn't even work that well, there's probably an opportunity for some other technical approach. And part of our philosophy, which forget whether it came more from them or from me, but was basically if we could have comparable performance to that, but in the hands of non-specialists, right? Because it's pretty hard to improve specialist performance. I mean, they're specialists. It's literally their expertise, but a tool that arguably improved their performance. So if you can get comparable to that device performance, which I'd say outperformed it, but then you can certainly benefit generalist, right? And that was really but the key catch of that, Omar, was you need a device that's quick and easy to use, because otherwise PCPs aren't going to use it. The average consult time is like 10 minutes. And the other solutions that have been available at the past, which really just for dermatologists, just aren't relevant for primary care because they take 5-10 minutes to do, which you're not going to double your consult time to evaluate one suspicious lesion at all regularly, right? So I think, clear unmet need, clearly unique and differentiated technology that top journals and top medical device entrepreneurs and investors clearly believed in, and an unmet need that, both personally and professionally really resonated. And I was, to be frank, 27. I'm like, okay, that's, if it doesn't end up working out and realize something's off, or, worst case scenario, hopefully made a good impression on some really impressive folks in my industry, or could go back to San Francisco, or, I think you also have to think of, kind of what happens if things don't work out, right? But yeah, I will say, we certainly had no idea that the product development would take 3.5 years. Just the hardware development would take 3.5 years, and that FDA would take 7.5 years, kind of getting through that full process. So,
But you guys,
I don't know if any of us would have moved if we knew that, or that it'd be close to that. I don't know if any of us would have moved forward, because you think about it, like, all right, timeline, return on capital, return on time invested. There'll probably be 3 or 4 competitors by then, which there's not. The couple serious companies that have attempted it have failed to. One failed their pivotal study 1.5 years ago. So, it's hard to know exactly how things unfold, but I think those were kind of the guiding lights and incentivizers.
Yeah, no, it's inspiring. Again, like, I've been following you guys for a long time, and, yes, I'm friends with you guys, but, I really am a big fan of the technology. And I guess, it's one of the few companies that come to mind where it's a really good example of coupling like software and AI that makes sense with hardware. And I hate to say it, but like sometimes I see, I'm not going to mention which companies those are. There's some companies are hardware companies that they tout AI. It's not AI. And even if it is, it just doesn't make sense. I'm like, what's the purpose of putting this on this piece of hardware other than just to make it really expensive and raise more money, right? It doesn't make sense. But you guys have a very thoughtful approach about solving this unmet need in a way that scales, right? And I think that, DermaSensor, I'm really pulling for you guys to have like a very big, lucrative, exit, hopefully in the future, or whatever ends up happening. I just wanted to be a massive success story because it's one of the, great examples, I think, of a true med tech company. Right. I think there's no offense to the device companies. There's a lot of med device companies who try and act like they're a tech company, and they're really not. And so the way you guys gone about doing things, your studies, I mean, I was reading, it was the Mary, I can't remember. The pivotal study.
Dr. Steve Mary's primary care leader at Mayo Clinic.
Yeah. And it's a great study because it pretty much shows like, this is something that, is at the same level, if not better, than a dermatologist, and can be scaled to a lot of primary care physicians. So, and I think that's the thing that we need to think about in healthcare these days, which is, the fact of the matter is more patients are not going, people are going to go to the doctor less and less. Like that's, you can't get people to go to see specialists all the time. So how do you,
or in new places like retail health.
Oh yeah, exactly. So just how do you optimize the time of value the patient gets within that short time frame that they're with the primary care? And I think that this is just like, in my opinion, your legal team may not like this, but I'm just going to say it. I think that it's a great example of something that has the potential to become a standard of care, that every patient goes and a DermaSensor device is used, to check for these things,
Yeah,
so
that's the vision that I haven't used this as much recently with investors, but yeah, earlier on, we're trying to be the next tool of the trade in primary care, sitting along, DermaSensor sitting alongside an otoscope, stethoscope, ophthalmoscope, blood pressure monitor, cuff, right? It's kind of just another one of those. Oh, yeah, maybe we'll be a verb at some point, right? Oh, suspicious lesion, DermaSensor,
Yeah, and by the way, just from a category creation and branding standpoint, great name, great name.
I can't take credit for that. I don't know how the hell they got the domain and trademark for both OrthoSensor and DermaSensor 10 years ago. You figured one or both of those would have been taken, but yeah, we did do a whole rebranding exercise on maybe changing the company name, because we have the same, DermaSensor Inc., DermaSensor device. Thought maybe that'd be, you're the marketing expert here, but and it was funny, Maurice, we came up with a couple alternatives like maybe how Butterfly does. Do you have Butterfly IQ or kind of come up with a one word? And I remember Maurice rejected because we thought of renaming the company. And he's like, he basically vetoed. It might have been the only thing he's really vetoed in 7 years of working with him. He's like, no, don't. It's stupid. Everyone's just gonna call DermaSensor anyway. Because I guess Mako, that's what happened. They had whatever name.
Look at Intuitive and Da Vinci. It's another great example.
They had whatever name for. That's the point. I don't remember. A lot of people don't. Had whatever name for the robot system, but no one called it. Everyone just called it the Mako robot. So I think he kind of.
It's the same thing. Same thing happened with us at Mazor. Like we had the Renaissance system. Nobody called it the Renaissance. So everybody called it the Mazor robot.
Exactly. Yeah.
But no, I think. That's no. I think it's a great name, and the fact that like you can make a verb out of it, and that it tells you. I like names that are category creators that are practical and tell you exactly what it is. DermaSensor. I can go tell like the average Joe on the street DermaSensor, and they'll probably have an idea of what it is.
Yeah. Okay. Something about assessing skin. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. So now that you guys are through the FDA and stuff, when this starts getting rolled out into clinics, how can you walk us through how it works? I'm a patient. I walk into my primary care and I say, hey, like, I think I have this thing. Like I was out in the sun. What could it be? Walk us through how the device works and what happens.
Yeah. So from the patient side, it's interesting. In primary care, most suspicious lesions are initially identified by patients, right? So if you're the family doctor, internal medicine, it's typically a more reactive process, like the patient, exactly like you said, oh, my friend or my spouse kind of noticed something. They said this mole looked weird. What do you think? Dermatology, it's the opposite. It's typically higher risk patients, and the dermatologist is proactively doing a skin exam on everyone. So it's funny, our large dermatology study with 10 study centers, Dana-Farber at Harvard led that. 2/3 of the lesions that were enrolled, that were biopsied, were identified by the physician, by the dermatologist. Whereas the opposite in the primary care study. In the primary care study, only 1/3 was identified by the physicians, the other 2/3 by patient, family, or friends. So anyway, it depends where you go is the answer and kind of how the process unfolds. But for primary care, yeah, typically it's kind of patient identified initially. We do think that'll change a bit though. With the availability of the device, doctors are saying, well, now that I have this automated quantitative tool and, improves my performance for assessing skin, patients believe they're getting better care because now I actually have like an objective test result to show them and kind of inform our decision making. I'm going to do more skin exams. So, but we haven't changed that yet, but we expect that to change at least a bit. But yeah, typically it's just like you said, okay, that lesion looks a bit odd. Well, actually, you know what? Why don't I do a live product demo for you?
Oh, so that's a first. No, you know what? We have 140 episodes. Nobody's done a live product demo. This is going to be a first.
Oh, really? Yeah, I got that device sitting right there behind me. So glad I thought of it. We'll role play. So we'll say I'm the doctor, you're the patient, and this will be your arm coming through the screen.
Okay.
So Omar, that this mole you pointed out here. Wait, can you see it?
Oh yeah, I can see it.
Yeah, you see this guy right there. So this mole you pointed out on your arm that you mentioned, you thought or your wife thought was changing a bit. I've got this new device, FDA cleared, uses completely harmless light. Let's calibrate first. Okay, great. I disinfected and make sure to wipe off, any makeup or dirt that might be on the probe tip. And so the whole process here, so calibration complete, it's ready to go. And the whole process here, actually, I'll go this way, see it a bit better. The whole process here takes about 30 seconds. Each measurement or recording is non-invasively assessing about 0.5 millimeter volumetrically of tissue. So the idea is you pick it up, put it back down in different parts of the lesion. So you're taking these non-invasive optical tissue samples, and Omar, instead of sending this data to a laboratory or off to a doctor to review, the FDA clear algorithm did an immediate analysis. So based on the pivotal study with over 1,000 patients, over 200 skin cancers, this is a negative result to monitor. So positive says investigate further. That's a 97% chance of being benign. So negative for any of the 3 cancer types. So I'm not that worried about the lesion as your doctor. the device thinks it's low risk, keep an eye on it. If you
You
see,
know what I love? Something I want to point out, because again, this is the other thing that people don't take into account when introducing new medical technology is that physicians are already overwhelmed with stuff. So a lot of times, some med tech companies they put all this data onto a readout, right? And you guys could have done that, but you made it very simple, which is like you have monitor and then further investigation.
it's funny. Yeah, monitor and investigate further. Yeah, derms get frustrated. They're like, but where's the image or like the spectral data plot or, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, PCPs don't want to see that.
They just like
And I'm
quick, like,
like,
okay,
they're not
good.
like, you guys are specialists. You care about
And
all that data and you want to
and you
analyze
know what?
everything. Like PCPs are trying to do their job, which is make a quick triage decision.
And you know what? Here's the other thing is that we also underestimate the fact that, like, I mean, look, I have a PCP. I haven't talked to him in almost a year and a half. I'm usually engaging with like a physician's assistant or nurse practitioner, right? You know,
But
and so
yeah,
no,
Omar, here, and we talked about commercializing this, but really the credit of our medical advisors, they're like, there's no point in bringing, I'll show you. Investors always get a kick out of this. So that's what I inherited. That's what was handed to me
what?
like 7.5
Oh my
years ago.
god!
And it's funny, the second gen, and so you can see the current one, it's the little one on, on the far right
Yeah,
next to it.
it's a huge difference.
Yeah, so that's first gen versus fourth gen. But it's funny, the screen, there's all this data like the spectral, the reflectance, the different wavelengths, and all of our medical advisors are like, yeah, I mean, if you want derms to use it and try to sell it for $100,000, and maybe that makes sense. But no primary care doctor is going to buy that 30-pound microwave size system. Like, doesn't make
No, because where's it going to sit? Like
yeah, like
that's
it's just
yeah, because this, like, your current device sits on any counter they currently have. And again, this is why I get excited about a company like DermaSensor, because it's a true tech company. Like, you took into account, like, okay, the end user, do they want all that data? No. Where can it sit in the office,
yeah,
or in their current workflow?
yeah. I
Yeah,
would
and I
say
think that's so important.
the one big, and I think there's lots of different pros and cons and philosophies on doing work abroad first. I think also, and there was a lot of debate about this at the board level, actually.
You did a lot of your work in Australia, correct?
We did. So we did. It's a major public health issue there, skin cancer. 1 in 5 Americans get skin cancer in their lifetime. 2 in 3 Australians. So
Wow, I had no idea.
Yeah, 1 in 12 get melanoma. So it's a pretty crazy, I mean, take it, the demographics of Australians, where a lot of them are from, geographically, and now all of a sudden putting them in Australia, it's a problem. So when it comes to the skin and UV damage, so but some unexpected challenges commercially, like, wait, all the GPs there are already expert, literally dermatologist level literature, and our own studies suggest are on par, arguably better than many dermatologists in the US. So they, similar to derms in the US, like, they don't really need that much help from a new tool. So that was like an interesting realization. There's still a lot of interest and we've had a waiting list actually for like a year. But the biggest learning, to your point about, get an MVP out there, product market fit, blah, blah, blah. The biggest change we made was adding a scale. So originally the thinking was, you're a primary care doctor, you're unsure what to do with the lesion, right? Which, as non-specialist, could happen quite a lot, right? Should I refer it or not? Some PCPs do biopsies. So it's like, okay, make it binary, right? High risk, low risk, or refer or not refer, And so that's what we started off with. We actually used the terms higher risk and lower risk, because we're like, well, high risk, low risk is kind of definitive. It's a bit diagnostic in nature and also could concern patients. Higher risk, low risk ended up worrying them anyway, so it didn't really work. But so that was one learning. But PCPs felt like there's not really enough here. Just, it's too simple, right? You kind of have that, we kind of, the pendulum swung too far. So like, all right, we know we don't want it complex, we want it simple. But then it was literally just, basically higher risk, lower risk. It was too simple. They're like, we need a little more, like, when it says higher risk, how high of risk? That was kind of the feedback we were getting from users. And we, looking at the data from the first couple studies, we realized, man, the positive predictive value gets really high for certain lesions. Like, so we modeled, okay, if we had some scale and some score, like, what could that look like? And we saw in a pivotal study validated. So in the pivotal study with over 1,000 patients, the likelihood that a lesion is cancerous gets as high as 61% for a score of 10. So it's basically a scale from 0 to 10. That's a very high positive predictive value for skin cancer, right? And so that's something that A, was meaningful and helpful to physicians, but B, Omar, opened up a whole new product use, kind of product market fit application that we hadn't really considered, which is not just, okay, I'm unsure what to do, I use the device, tip me one direction or the other. It still serves that purpose. That's arguably the most important purpose. But the other one was, okay, I know I'm concerned about this lesion, but how concerned? Because dermatology wait times, there's a lot, I won't name names, but I'd say at least half the health systems we've spoken with in the last couple of years have 6-month plus wait times for dermatology. And so there's a lot of health systems that are very excited about the first objective, systematic way of prioritizing patients that have high risk for cancer. And especially with our device, how quick and easy to use and non-invasive and low cost. So, there's a lot of health systems that are like, okay, if it's a score of 8 or above on average, scores from 8 to 10, and the pivotal had a 40% chance of being cancerous, we'll use the urgent referral checkbox in our EMR. And even though we have a 6+ month wait time, we'll prioritize those patients and push them to the front of the line. Because there are very, very few PCPs in the US right now. There's definitely some derms, but little to no PCPs in the US right now that 40% of their referrals are malignant. So that's like very meaningful for the patient, for payers, for the primary care doctor, for the dermatologist, for the health system that we've met PCPs that don't refer to dermatologists in their own health system because the wait time is so long. They'll refer to private clinic derms outside of their own colleagues. And also they've started doing biopsies. We've heard comments like dermatologists can't take care of our patients. They can't see them. So we've had to start doing biopsies or, we refer to, So anyway, yeah, it's a tough situation out there. It's one of AAD's priority is access.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. And again, I think this is kind of like the best example of medical innovation or really good science meets a tech-enabled solution that actually scales. I want to ask you a question that, again, I don't know if your legal will like this, so feel free to say pass. But is there a world where this device, or maybe a light version of this device, is available to the consumer? And if not, why?
So that was the original vision, actually, it was my early pitch decks. I actually don't want to look at them. I'd cringe. It was phase 1, provider use, phase 2, patient use, put 1 year apart, which is, it's literally laughable now that I think back on it. No, I mean, consumer use. So the first conference I ever went to in late 2016 was teledermatology in London, and World Congress for Teledermatology in London. And there is a company there, which this is publicly known, so I think it's fine to share, Skin Vision, that presented. They've been Class 1C marked and in use with patients in Europe for literally a decade for automatic assessment of moles using any smartphone. And they presented there that they expected FDA clearance in early 2017. I've heard them say that 3 or 4 more times in the last 7 years of conferences. Never happened. The FDA had a scientific advisory panel meeting 1.5 years ago on this category of product. They call them skin lesion analyzers, whether it's for dermatologists or PCPs or patients, whatever. I don't know. I mean, it'll happen in our lifetime, I think, but it's not going to be in the next decade. Now having just been through a 7-year process with the FDA, intimately understanding everything they want to look at, having received, listened to the 2-day panel of a dozen medical advisors that the panel 1.5 years ago, I do not see it happening in the next decade, maybe the next 20 years. Especially when you read papers like the one from Memorial Sloan Kettering, which showed commercially available software for automated lesion assessment, most of it available in Europe, some in the US, just illegally being marketed on the App Store for consumer use. The average melanoma sensitivity. So the average rate, if you have melanoma, you take a photo of it and upload it to these apps or software. the likelihood that you get a result saying concerning or high risk or whatever the output is was 28%. So 3/4 of melanomas, it said, oh, you're fine or low risk or whatever the negative version is. Like, that's terrifying. Like, literally, it could be, like, these could be killing thousands of people a year. Like, we don't know. And so, yeah, I think the FDA is very, very concerned of that potential future, treading cautiously. So I think for our device, there's that reality. You have to have near perfect performance. And also the issue is you just have a bunch of lesions, right? So you may scan one lesion and it give you a positive result, but there's a melanoma a few inches away or on the other side of your body. So there's that, and there's just like cost of goods reality, right? I think we can get COGS down significantly. They're already pretty low, but can get them down further. But, they're not going to be $50 anytime soon.
Got it. Well, so, as we kind of wrap up, and hey, I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing more, and we definitely want to have you back to share some more updates. Like what's next for you and the team for the year? And what are some of the big goals you guys have in mind for this year?
Sure. Well, obviously after a long road, very excited now to finally be over the FDA hurdle. I think as advisors and certainly investors and board members remind me, they're like, great, now, you're through that first phase. Now the real fun and hard work starts, which is building a business and actually starting to get revenue for the first time and all that fun stuff. So, that's immediate focus. Really happy that, we got a lot of coverage by great reporters and outlets, Forbes, Reuters, Stat, probably a couple dozen other print articles. And also a lot of top tier. I don't think we've got any national yet, kind of the national outlet, but Fox, CBS, NBC, and ABC have all done, affiliates all over the country, kind of aired a lot the first couple of days about the clearance. So, we're off to a good start commercially. A lot of inbound interest from commercial partners, investors, and certainly customers and health systems. So, getting product out the door. Got a great new manufacturer. Just had a call with them a couple hours ago, delivering hundreds of devices here in coming months. And off to the commercial team's time to shine. It's been the kind of engineers the first 3 or 4 years, then clinical and medical the last 3 or 4 years, and then kind of the baton is being passed to the commercial team, and they're certainly doing well so far.
That's awesome. Well, I'm really excited to see you guys go on your full launch, and definitely want to have you back to share some updates. But it's been a long time coming. I think I posted about you guys like maybe a couple years ago. Like one of my predictions was like, like hardware with software is the thing, man. And DermaSensor is like the one sort of shining example of that. So it's so exciting to see it all come to fruition, and I'm can't be happier for you, man. You guys deserve it.
Thank you. And I mean, there's been a few good examples, but so one of our advisors brought on because it's a bit of a niche space, right? Primary care disease detection tools. So brought on Steve Meyer, the ex-CEO of Walsh Allen, as an advisor a couple years ago, as well as Jason Bellett, the co-founder of Echo Health. So I think Echo in particular, a perfect example of what you've been describing.
It's a great example of that. Yeah.
There's not many, right? I think them, some other successful ones, the AI fundus cameras, but they're using existing camera systems, right? So they're just developing the software on top of them. But there's been a few examples of primary care disease detection tools. All the animal ultrasound companies, those are good examples, right?
Yeah, and I mean, who knows? I mean, I think we'll see. I mean, I don't know. Maybe Maurice is thinking about this already, but I think like what's interesting is you mentioned for DermaSensor to be there, like with your otoscope, your ophthalmoscope in the primary care. Well, to my knowledge, those are still not software enabled devices, and like very primary care. So I feel like DermaSensor could essentially be opening up like a whole category of detection tools, AI enabled software backed detection tools for primary care.
Good. And actually, I was all doom and gloom on consumer use, but I should say if it's part of physician, if it's basically in collaboration with the physician. So for example, why am I blanking on the name? What's the Israeli company I feel like it retails out of like Walmart now with the little the little like handheld device.
Oh,
Yeah, with the Otis.
it's not
Title Care. Yeah. So
it
is.
all right, good.
Yeah. So Title Care, right? Like you can imagine. Okay, well, but you have your skin cancer detector. Like basically tricorder like devices where it's like, okay, you gather kind of the different data, and that's part of what the physician evaluates. So we have thought about maybe we work with Amazon or something to mail around like the dermatology care kit every 3 months or 6 months. And you kind of gather different data, and then a physician reviews it and decides what to do. So yeah, you could see 10 years from now there being like the Apple Home Health Kit, or and there's a sleek stand with like a few of these little devices. Title Care and us and a couple others. So yeah, that could happen. I think for cancer though, no physician involvement is tough, right? Even Cologuard is prescription use, right? You just take care of it yourself in the bathroom.
Right.
So.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we'll see what happens, because I think what's also exciting, we can kind of end on this, and is you have these the biggest companies on planet Earth: Microsoft, Apple, Google, Amazon. They all have fiduciary responsibilities to grow, and they're not going to wake up tomorrow and be like, hey, you know what, guys, let's start making furniture. Like healthcare is kind of it. Yeah. And so I think big tech kind of tripped over itself the last few years trying to get in. And now they've kind of realized like how hard it is. Yeah. They can't wave their big tech flags and come and be like, oh yeah, everybody's going to love it. And so seeing things like Amazon acquiring One Medical, which is a primary care company. So it's going to be really exciting to see the merging and partnership that happens in our industry. But yeah, man, I'm really excited for you guys. So Cody, thank you so much for coming on the show. And where can people find you online? You have a TikTok, I think, don't you?
No, I'm not. I'm a Instagram guy. Actually, I think I've been logged out, like unable to access my Facebook for a month or two. I just found out some news. So anyway, Facebook, I think has been my thing for a decade. But yeah, no, LinkedIn, definitely active on LinkedIn. Yeah, Instagram's personal stuff more. But yeah, LinkedIn, email, our website. Go to our website. We spent a lot of money and time getting that thing launched.
It's a good website, by the way. Shout out to the team. I checked out. It's really
okay. Yeah, filmed a new video. First time I ever did the whole like makeup thing. I was like, oh shit, I probably should have shaved. But our marketing director, she's like, no, that's fine. Startup entrepreneurs, you guys are supposed to look scruffy and like you're worn out and haven't slept anyway. So I was like, great.
There you go. Exactly.
I fit the bill for that. So yeah, no, thanks a lot for the opportunity. Guys, I'd say almost feels like our normal chit chats, at a conference or hopping on Zoom. But it just recorded this stuff.
Yeah, man, that's exactly it. It's almost like my regular business kind of funds this business of the podcast, but I just love it, man. And so hopefully in the future, like I will have a baller studio in either LA or San Diego, and I just fly people out and just Joe Rogan it all the time. Yeah, so we'll work towards that. But anyways, I want to thank my audience for listening. Be sure to check out Cody on LinkedIn. Go give their company page a follow. That's DermaSensor. And as always, don't forget, subscribe to the show. We release a lot of episodes that we don't directly promote, so that way you get notified of them right away. Write a review and give us 5 stars. That's why we're the #1 show in the industry, because I constantly remind you guys about this. So be sure to do that. I'm your host, Omar Khateeb, and we'll see you all next time. Thank you for enjoying another epic episode of the State of MedTech. If you're feeling inspired and love this episode, do us a favor, hit that subscribe button and turn notifications on so you never miss an episode. And be sure to give us 5 stars and write a short review, because that helps more people discover this amazing community of ours. If you're a company who has a executive that you'd like to be on the show, or perhaps you want to sponsor one of the episodes, shoot us an email at hello@khateebandco.com. Take care, and we'll see you next time.